Welcome to A Note to My Teenage Self. Okay, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I really didn't want to say that, but it just came out. So, today's video is something different. It is everything you need to know about applying for med school. I decided when I was in about year 9, when we started taking science as biology, chemistry and physics and not just science, that I wanted to do medicine. I realised that I really enjoyed science, I really enjoyed the subject, I was good at it, and I always got the biggest thrill when I was good at something. Like when I got a good mark back, it was just the best thing in the world for me. Like, not everyone cares as much, but for me it was a massive deal. So that's why I decided that medicine was the way for me, on top of obviously health difficulties with my dad, spending a lot of time in the hospital and thinking this is something that I could really see myself doing. So that was all brilliant. I decided it was what I wanted to do, and I spent the next 3 years dedicating myself to that. Literally, it's all I ever thought about, constantly, all the time. I was so prepared. Every single thought I had every single day was about the fact that I wanted to get into med school. It was quite overwhelming, to be honest. I wrote my personal statement, everything, and then we get to about 1 week to 2 weeks before the application deadline, and I realised it was not what I wanted to do. It was the biggest decision probably I've ever made, having been prepared for it for the last 3 years. I was so ready, and then I was like, hang on a second. I realised that as a person in the last 3 years, my life has changed drastically. I have changed drastically. I am not the same optimistic year 9 that wanted to push herself to the limit. That is not me anymore, because I've been pushing myself to the limit for the last 3 years when my mental health hadn't been tip-top, my home life was difficult. I realised that that isn't the life that I wanted for myself for the rest of my life. I didn't want a career that was going to push me to my absolute limit every single day, stress-wise. I've been stressed for the last 3 years, and I didn't want to be stressed for the next 40. That's not to say that medicine is a bad career, and some people are so unbelievably cut out for it. It's they shouldn't do anything else, but I am just not one of those people, which was a really difficult realisation to come to, having put my everything into it, but definitely a good one. It was like a weight off of my shoulders, and I didn't realise that it was something that was bringing me down so intensely until I actually changed my mind. So I didn't end up applying for med school, but the reason I'm making this video is because I prepared for it so intensely for 3 years that I wouldn't want all of that knowledge and preparation to go to waste. So I thought, I'll make this video, I'll share it with, other people that might be looking to apply to med school, and then I won't feel like I've just wasted so much of my teenage years preparing for this. So hopefully people find this useful. If this is my first video that you're watching, please subscribe to my channel to watch my journey as a student. I have just finished 6th form and I'm heading off to university in September. Yeah, I'm just going to get into it. So I went to a medical conference at UCL on the 3rd of February, I think it was 2018. I think. And we had lots of people speaking to us, students, doctors, everything. One of the first things they told us was some key attributes that they want all of their, that all medical students should have. There's a lot of attributes here, but they are quite important. I wrote them all down. So, intelligence, commitment, and a realistic attitude to medicine. I think that one's really, really important, because a lot of people imagine doing medicine is in a movie or in a TV show, and you're going to be like the show Doctors or whatever, and obviously that's not the case, and it's really important that their students recognise that. An interest in the scientific basis, responsibility and leadership, which is obviously really important, cooperation, empathy, tolerance and integrity. So those are more on the softer side. So we've got the important ones like intelligence and communication, etc., and then we've got actually you need to have empathy, and you need to have tolerance, and you need to have integrity, because being a doctor isn't just about science, and that was the thing that attracted me to it the most, that it would actually engage my empathetic side and the side that really, really cares about people. And that's actually how I realised what I really want to do with my life, but that's for another video. So flexibility, being confident and not arrogant, because it's like with intelligence obviously comes confidence, and you can take it a little bit too far. Nobody wants an arrogant doctor. Nobody wants to deal with that. So that's really, really important. Originality and initiative. And what's really important is a sense of humour, is to actually have a lighter side to you, because as I said before, like the job is going to be really, really intense and stressful every day. You need to have a little bit of relief. So yeah, those were the key things that I was told were needed. We've got the academic requirements. I think everybody knows that. I'm not going to go through that in great detail. Obviously you need A-levels. Most unis want chemistry and biology. If you're lucky, some will just have chemistry, or some will just have biology plus maths. Some 35% of unis will take a non-scientific subject. I took English literature and geography. And chemistry and biology. So I was really worried that I wasn't going to get in because I didn't have physics or maths, but I also wasn't going to put myself through it because I didn't enjoy them. I didn't want to study them for 2 years. I also probably not smart enough that I think physics is like the hardest subject. A lot of unis recognise that you've got wider interests, and what I always said was I take English literature and that really improves my empathy. So that's really important when dealing with patients. And I take geography, which improves my knowledge of different cultures, which again is so important in medicine because, like I said, and I will say a lot of times, being a doctor is about more than just knowing the science. And you can diagnose someone and tell them what's wrong with them, but if you can't tell them empathetically, then you shouldn't be a doctor. If you can't acknowledge that they're part of so-and-so culture and therefore you need to take these precautions, then you're not going to do your job perfectly. And that was really important to me. So I took those subjects knowing that I'd be the minority, but thinking that it would actually give me quite a good boost. Another really important piece of advice that I got for people when I was applying for medicine was that it's really, really important to have a hobby. And I used to not really understand this, but it does make perfect sense when you think about it, that you're applying to do one of the hardest degrees that there is and to take one of the hardest jobs that there is, and it doesn't get any easier. It's really important to have something that you can do that at the end of the hard day, at work or at uni, you can go home and let off steam by doing this hobby, whether it be, like for me, it was always musical theatre, dancing, singing and acting, and that was always quite promising. People said that was a good thing to have because even though it takes my mind away from studying or whatever, sometimes that's a good thing, because if I had the hardest day at uni and I just went home and like cried about it and carried on studying, then I wouldn't be taking it in as much. But if I could go home, go out to rehearsal, you know, feel so much like de-stressed and then go back and study a bit more, I'm going to take in more information. So one thing that's really important is that although you know that you're looking to do one of the hardest like degrees that there is and one of the hardest careers that there is, don't forget to do what you love at the same time, because that will never not be important. Like, no matter where you are in your life and what job you're doing, it will never not be important to have a hobby. Like, it's the best thing. Or whatever it is, just hold on to it and don't lose it in all the intensity of studying and revising. Like, that is so important. Don't lose your passion. It's really not worth it. Okay, so I'm going to talk quickly about the UCAT and BMAT exams. It depends on what university you want to go to which exam you're going to have to do. If you want to go to one university that needs the UCAT and one that needs the BMAT, then you're going to have to sit both. You do need to have sat them before you apply. You have to do them in either September or October for the BMAT, and the UCAT can be sat anytime in the summer up till September, I think is the latest that you can do it. They are expensive. I mean, I spent, I think, £80 booking my UCAT exam, sat it in September, and then changed my mind in October. So I'm not the best example, but it's really, really important to revise for these exams. So the UCAT is verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, and situational judgment. So those are all things that when you say it out loud can definitely sound like they're needed for med school. Some of the questions are so unbelievably random. You think, hang on a second, how is this going to help me? Some of them are really, really related. So it'll be like, you're a doctor, blah, blah, blah. The abstract reasoning I thought was so fun. It was like different shapes and patterns, and you have to choose which one comes next. So the only way to pass this exam and do well in it is to practice the questions, because it's like if you sat your 11 plus, if you went to grammar school there's no other exam like the UCAT, like there's no other exam like the 11 plus, and the only way to get used to it is by doing practice questions and practice tests. What's really important is time management, getting used to the style of questions. With the abstract reasoning is recognising the patterns, because after I'd done it for a while, I knew the answers because I'd done it so often that it was like, oh yeah, that's just like this and whatever. So it's really just a matter of practice. It's quite a long exam. I think it's 2 hours long. You do it in a test centre, so where you go to do your theory test. I was so nervous for mine, but I did quite well. But I mean, I started preparing for my UCAT when I was like in year 11, because I was like, I know that it's going to be difficult. And it's sort of like, if you have sat a theory test, a car theory test, then it's similar, where you can just sit on your phone and practice the questions. So it's like, why not start now? So I got my preparation in quite early. The BMAT is different. I didn't sit a BMAT. I did think I was going to, because one of the unis I was considering did want a BMAT. That is more essays, I believe, but I'm not going to tell you because I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, so it's really important to make sure you've booked those. Don't leave it too late, because you will just panic. And start revising ASAP. Practice is the only way to pass. You can't really rely on knowledge alone, because if you've never seen an abstract reasoning question before, the chances are you're not going to know how to solve it, and you're not going to get it right. Like, looking up early what unis you're interested in and whether or not they want the BMAT or the UCAT or both. Important thing to note is that I don't think it's changed. Birmingham didn't require either the UCAT or the BMAT when I applied. So that's quite a positive for people that are worried about how they're going to perform on those exams, or if you perform badly before you've applied and then you think, oh no, I'm never going to get in. Birmingham's the way to go. Probably the most important element about applying for med school is work experience. It's invaluable, but it's not just to put on your application, I did this and I did this and I did this. The most important thing that anyone told me when I was doing my application, and that anyone told me while I was at my work experience, was, what have you learned from this environment? What have you learned from being here? There's no point saying, I went and did a week work experience in the hospital, if you can't tell the interviewer or your personal statement what you learned from being there for that week. It just makes it completely futile. So it is really important while you're there to be keeping a log and constantly thinking, what have I just learned? What am I learning? What is this teaching me? So I'll talk you through the work experiences that I did. So the first work experience that I did for medicine, so I was researching what's good work experience to do for medicine when you're under the age of 16. And I came across the recommendation to go to a care home. So I knew I had a care home just up the road from me, and it was actually a care home that specialises in dementia patients. So sort of like a level up from just a regular care home. So I believe I called them, and then they called me in to have a little bit of an interview. It was very casual and very quick, but they just spoke to me briefly and made sure that I wasn't going to be messing around, made sure I was a sensible person enough to have in a very vulnerable environment. And I was, so they were happy to take me on, so I was really excited. It was difficult. One day I did just cry, because I mean, I'm quite an emotional person anyway. We were there for 2 weeks, so 10 days, because we didn't go on the weekends, but it was very educational, and it just opened my eyes, and it made me realise ways that I need to behave around these vulnerable people. It made me sort of aware of how I needed to change my behaviour for different types of patients in different situations. Most of all, it just grew me up a little bit. I think I hadn't really been exposed to anything that severe before. Really good. It was really beneficial. So the second lot of work experience I had was when I was doing my DAV bronze certificate. I needed a volunteering scheme. So my dad suggested to Reach for Health Rehabilitation Gym. But basically it's a gym designated to disabled people or ill people, people generally that can't work out in the same way that like your regular people that go to a gym can. They have stroke survivors, they have people with ME, from so many different walks of life, so many different illnesses and problems, but they all come out showing improvement. It's a really wonderful place. But so I spent my summer holiday going there once or twice a week, which was between year 10 and 11, working with different patients, generally just helping, cleaning up equipment, that sort of thing. One of the most like educational things I did, and also enjoyable, was working with a friend of my dad's who had had a stroke. and he was just the sweetest man. It was so rewarding, just sort of helping him get from one piece of equipment to the next and chatting to him, speaking to him about his day. And they're really grateful to just have a chat, because I think that, you know, these people, their day to day is difficult, so they just enjoyed chatting as well, which was really nice. The other thing about this was, because it was a long-term thing, rather than the 2 weeks that I did in the care home, it went from from the start of summer to the end. So overall it was more than summer as well, because I started off just doing Saturdays, so it was probably like 5 months, maybe 6 months that I was actually like going there for. And that shows more commitment than just doing the 2 weeks. And the people viewing your application, they'll recognise that this took more commitment than a 2-week placement would. But that's definitely a positive for doing any sort of volunteering. So the next piece of work experience that I did was a 1-week placement at Milton Keynes Hospital. It was honestly one of the best weeks of my life. I met one of my favourite people in the world, Neve, I'm talking about you, who is now at Oxford studying medicine. Perhaps she should be making this video and not me. So that was basically, it was a scheme. There was about 20 of us, I think. We all had to apply. We got asked before we went, is there any particular ward that you would like to be on? Intensive care would be the best unit to be on, because you see the most different cases, like the most variety, and usually the most severe. So I went back and asked for intensive care, and luckily I got what I asked for, so I was very pleased. And I was lucky because some people didn't have a preference, and they had like geriatrics, and this is like no disrespect to geriatric doctors, but it was so not my area of interest that I think that I would have found it like, I don't know, just not that enjoyable. Whereas on intensive care, seeing such a variety of different illnesses and problems, it was just incredible. I learnt so much. I met a man who had malaria. I met a woman who had fibromyalgia. I met a woman who had a brain tumour. A man who tried to kill himself. Like this huge variety of different like problems. And I got the opportunity to speak to people one-on-one. So I spoke one-on-one with the lady with the brain tumour, which really had an impact on me, because she told me that she had 2 sons at home and it was really difficult and she didn't know how she was going to get through it. And the lady with fibromyalgia, and she had a long list of problems wrong with her as well. So it was just really interesting to speak to these different people and get their insight on their own illnesses and how it impacted their lives, which is obviously important to know when wanting to be a doctor, because you have to consider, like I've said about a million times, but it's more, you know, it's more than just about the illness, but it's about the person, like the patient as well. We also did things all together. When we weren't on the ward, we had talks from midwives, hospital chaplain. We visited the morgue, which was like, oh, it was horrendous actually. And it was like, you know, if you're going to be dealing with deaths every day, get in the morgue, just experience it, just see what it's like. Very educational, sort of like difficult to digest, but one of these things that it's like a necessity in that sort of lifestyle. I came away from that week feeling like I had learnt so much. One of the most important things as well that I found when I was there is that when I was on the ward, we were shadowing different doctors, and on one day we shadowed a consultant, and he kept asking me and my, because we went in partners, me and my partner questions. And the best thing was like communicating about medicine and using medical phrases and understanding things and being able to speak about them in person in a like rolling conversation. And it's sort of like, now maybe this is going to sound silly, but when you learn a language, for example, I did French at GCSE and I know loads of French vocab, but I probably couldn't have a fluent conversation with my uncle who's French, because it's like there's a difference between knowing the vocab and being able to talk about it. And I think that's the same with medicine, is there's a difference between knowing the body parts and knowing the illnesses and knowing the symptoms than actually having a fluent conversation about it. And that's one of the most important things, is talking as much as you can, verbally actually speaking to professionals or anyone about medical conditions. The more you talk out loud about it, the more used to it you get, more comfortable you get, and then when you go to your interview, you'll find it really, really easy to hold these conversations about the different scenarios. So I loved that week. Yeah, I came away feeling really, really good about medicine. My next work experience was at a doctor's surgery. So this was in Milton Keynes because you can't go to a doctor's surgery in your area. So, again, it was Monday to Friday. And I explored all the areas of the surgery. So I did spend some days just sitting, like I spent a day with the pharmacist, or a few hours with the pharmacist. I spent a few hours in reception. But it was good to experience all the different areas of a doctor's surgery and how it runs, because again, it's more important than just, like, there's more that goes on than just seeing the patient and then that's it. There's so much that goes on in the background, and luckily I got the opportunity to experience all the different elements, and it allows you to have more respect for the profession as well. And yeah, so it was really again, it was really educational. I didn't realise that so many people go to the GP with mental health problems, so that was quite eye-opening. And the week was very educational. I also spent time with the university students that were doing placement there, so that was very interesting. And then the last piece of work experience that I have done is actually my part-time job. I work at Lloyd's Pharmacy, and have done for almost 2 years now. It is work experience because it's in a medical setting, but it's my part-time job. I get paid for it. I go there every week. I do overtime. During coronavirus, I was working there full-time at one point. But yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. I love working there. I'm doing at the moment a pharmacy assistant course, so there's room for development and it's very educational. When you work at pharmacy, you have to do constant certificates about different conditions, even if it's just like hay fever and coughs and colds and that sort of thing. There's all sorts of different training to be done. I think it's a brilliant place to work if you're an aspiring medic. It taught me so much. It taught me to get used to working with drugs. It taught me to get used to dealing with patients, especially angry patients, because we get them all the time. It taught me again to just be comfortable with speaking out loud about symptoms and medications and like possible conditions. It's been brilliant, and I'm gonna hope to keep my job when I go to uni, to get a transfer to the one there, because I enjoy it so much and I get paid well, good hours. In general, it's a good place to work. But so I would definitely recommend to anyone that wants to do medicine to get a job in some sort of healthcare setting. There's only so much you can learn in a week at a hospital, but there's, you know, endless knowledge that you can learn or that you can gain in 2 years at a pharmacy. So yeah, that's all my work experience, and not everyone does as much. I just happen to do a lot, but I think what the difference is that I sort of, every time I had an opportunity, I grasped it. So when I was doing my DOV volunteering, I decided to explore if I could do that in a medical setting, every element of my life, because I was so dedicated to wanting to do medicine, that every element of my life matched up with that. I decided early as well, like, if you know from year 9, then what's stopping you from starting early? Choosing which uni to go to. This is difficult. I think there are different elements that should go into this. Firstly, that you take the right subjects. Like, before you even think about applying, check their entry requirements, because you might not meet them. Secondly, whether or not they take the UCAT or the BMAT. I think it's good to explore the difference between the two, which one you think you'll perform better in, and use that to help you decide whether you're going to go to a uni that asks for either one. Also, whether or not the uni is more theory based or more practical based. This is really important. Unis like Oxford and Cambridge are incredibly theoretical. A friend of mine decided against going to Oxbridge or applying to Oxbridge because she wanted to be thrown into the practical side a lot more than they were offering there. And it's what works for you. Some people are more theoretical, some people want to be more practical, and it's genuinely just a matter of like preference. But make sure you look into the uni that you're looking at. Do they ask for or do they supply more practical opportunities, or are they more theoretical? And just like really explore it and make sure you're making the decision that's right for you. You want to be comfortable there, you want to be happy there. You're not just studying, you're actually living your life. Let's talk about interviews. There are panel interviews, so these are usually very formal. And they have lots of different types of people. So you might have a doctor on your panel, you might have a person from the admissions at the uni, you might have a current student. So this is a panel of interviewers, and it is a formal situation. And most unis actually have MMIs, which stands for multiple mini interviews. So these are as such stations that they set up in a room or in several rooms, and each station has a different topic, different topics or scenarios, etc. Some of them are like acting, like they throw you into a situation and you have to like act how you would deal with it. Some will ask you about your work experience, some will ask you about your background. Some advice that I was given when preparing for these are: make sure you're listening clearly, make sure you take a minute to pause and think about what you're going to say, answer concisely, and don't fill the silence if you think you haven't spoken enough. Don't continue speaking just to fill that gap. Like, sometimes silence is good. So how to prepare for your interview. So you want to be ready to discuss your UCAS application, so make sure you've looked over it before you go, or like when you're on your way. Things like your personal statement, so you remember what you put. So if they bring up a certain element of your personal statement, you haven't completely forgotten it because you've not looked at it since you handed it in. Be up to date, this is really important as well, be up to date with current affairs. So if you look on like BBC Healthcare, then they're always posting like whatever the latest is. I imagine if there was any interviews that like earlier this year that they would ask about coronavirus. Even next year they probably will. Like, there might be questions about it because it's current affairs, it's what's going on in the healthcare world. Medical ethics is a really common topic to come up in interviews. Subjects like, what do you think about euthanasia and things like that. That doesn't, I don't think, just comes naturally to anyone. So there are a lot of really good books you can get about medical ethics. It's such a hard topic to even wrap your head around. Like, there are so many things to know before you can make a judgment. Be ready to debate about things when you're going to an interview, because like I say, the topic of like medical ethics is a controversial one. So you might give an answer and your interviewer might want to challenge that, not because of their personal views, but just because they want to see how you react. And it's good to be prepared for a debate type scenario when you have to justify yourself and do it reasonably and calmly and confidently. I think that's pretty much all you need to know about interviews. As much as medicine is about more than just academics plays a pretty damn big role, so make sure you're always studying and revising hard for your exams to give yourself the best possible chance. I don't think that I have anything else to put out there. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't lose yourself in books and revision. Like, work hard, but just like live your life at the same time, because you know, if you get into med school and you get through med school and you come out the other side, you're going to be a doctor, and that's not going to be easy. So just live your life, basically. Try your best. And if you found this video useful, please let me know in the comments. If you have any more questions for me, then message me or comment below, whatever you want. I hope that this helps. It's just a way for me to get my knowledge out there and not feel like I completely wasted 3 years preparing. So the next video that I upload is probably going to be how I got an unconditional at my #1 uni. This is the next part of my UCAS application journey. It has been a long journey, but I'll be uploading part 2 very soon. So if you want to see what I ended up doing, then stay tuned for the next video. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Bye.